Welcome to Conversations with Kara-Leah. My name, of course, is Kara-Leah. This week on the show, I am having a conversation with Claire Ellie. I can't even remember when I met Claire, but we totally bonded because she's completely into dance and yoga as well. And we had some pretty cool discussions at NZ Spirit Festival this year. So I decided to get her on the show so we could talk about embodiment, we could talk about what confidence really is, we could talk about how shame binds us up, and we could also touch on what's going on with ISTA right now, because Claire did ISTA back in 2017. So I was really curious to hear her perspective and how she's relating to what's blowing up in the ISTA community right now. More on that in the conversation. So flow on in and then enjoy. Hey, Claire, so nice to have you here for a conversation. Welcome.
Thank you.
Where in the world are you right now?
I'm in Titirangi in Auckland, New Zealand.
Awesome. I'm guessing it's raining there as well.
Yeah, we have our own little microclimate here. And yeah, it's not raining, but we've had a ton of rain in the last week. So it's a nice break.
All right, so I wanted to talk to you about a range of things because you do amazing work. One of your, I guess the key thing that you focus on is the journey from like anxiety and overwhelm and shame through to confidence. And one thing I've heard you say is that you've been like studying the outer confidence over the last decade or so. What does confidence mean? When you say confidence, what is that?
I love that question. Yeah. So for me, confidence is trust. It's self-trust. It's knowing you've got your own back. It's being able to lean into a sense of stability and trust that whatever is coming up in life, you can handle. It's not, I think people mistake confidence for being the loudest person in the room. And I don't think it's that at all. I mean, it can mean that if you want it to mean that, but it's very much that sense of I'm capable to hold myself. And it's something that I've been studying for the last 10 years. It's initially when I got on this journey, I didn't know that's what I was doing. And it's been in hindsight, especially I would say over the last specifically probably 2 to 3 years that I've been like, that's what was happening. And yeah, I think it's probably a good context just to speak into a little bit about like how that for me. I grew up with a lot of shame, a lot of anxiety, experienced trauma in my teens, and just was small, like just debilitating and anxiety and depression, and that was my norm. I didn't actually know that there was life without that. And then I moved over to London. I was 22 at the time, was going out with someone, it all blew up. The breakup was the catalyst for all the things coming up, all the trauma. And I'd been into a lot of I'd been into yoga and things. I'd been practicing for about a year or so. But it was that moment that I started to take it seriously. And I realized just how dissociated from life I was. I was like living on another planet. And the way in to the healing journey was through my body. So I got big into yoga. I kept walking past this dance studio, and I'd always fancied, I'd always said to myself, I want to be on a dance video, like I had this dream of being on a dance video, and I was, in the fucking trenches, walking through the streets of London, bawling my eyes out. And I kept walking past this hip hop studio, and I thought, okay, I'm just going to try a class. So I signed up, went to the first class. There was a big mirror that was confronting. I hadn't owned a mirror for like 10 years because I had so much body shame and things, and getting in front of this mirror, and I couldn't pick it up. It was like all these quick movements and this choreography. And I was like, the self-hatred between me and what I was seeing in the mirror was so severe. I wanted to run. I'd signed a direct debit at the studio. I was thinking of all the things, like maybe I tell them like my mum's got cancer and I need to fly back home, or like all these things. And there was something in me, something that came from like, on a soul level that it was like, you are staying here. And I slowly started to find freedom, and it became a practice. And the people that were going they were living for something more than the day-to-day grind that I had been in. So I started to love it, and I wasn't good at it. Like, I was the one that was always 2 steps behind, but the culture, the expression, the aggression, hip hop and street dance, it comes from the street. It's grounded. It's like, and I loved it, and I learned more from that journey than I did from yoga, especially in the initial stage. But fast forward, I got into a lot of, I was more in the street dance freestyle scene, and did my first dance battle in the Netherlands in front of like thousands of people, and it was fucking terrifying. And I remember going and doing it and just walking outside in the rain, leaving afterwards, and just being like, my life's just changed. Because you got to have confidence. You're up there, you don't know what song they're going to play. You've got to rep your fucking ego and like be in your body, and it was shocking. It was terrible aesthetically, but it wasn't about that. It's never been about that. It's been about what came from that. So anyway, fast forward again, I became obsessed with it. I was living in London for 5 years, moved to New York, went to dance school, trained with a whole lot of amazing people in that culture and in that community, traveled the world teaching from various yoga teachers, went through India, spent 9 months in Cambodia working at a healing center out there, and just really, really worked with a huge variety of people from all walks of life, and the body and how you can move emotion and heal emotion through the body as the vessel for healing was profound for me. So that's kind of, I guess, like
your origin story.
I'm so fucking obsessed with confidence through movement and dance and all the things. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I freaking love that you did a dance battle competition. Did you say in Holland, the Netherlands?
Yeah, in the Netherlands. Yeah.
So literally they play a song, you don't know what song it's going to be, and there's like a battle. So there's 2 of you there, and you just have to kind of freestyle it facing that person, and kind of like
Yeah, pretty much. So actually the first time I didn't make it. I didn't make it past the prelims. So I didn't actually get to there was hundreds and hundreds of people in this battle. But after that I did, battle people 1-to-1, and it's fucking terrifying, but you have to you have to fully commit to your movements. You have to fully commit to being present. And I really struggled, it wasn't, most of the people were dancing with were, backup dancers for, really well-known singers and all of that. And I was coming in at 22 years old and was so dissociated from my body. So that, and I had teachers and mentors that really saw something in me and saw my yearning to heal, that they just took me under their wing. And I was fortunate enough to really train with some amazing people, and, the confidence builds and you get more embodied, and how you tell your story through your body.
Yeah, it almost sounds like an alternative history that I might have lived at some point. I'm just like, oh my God, yes, I could so have done that in my 20s. So the yoga was weaving through at the same time, right? So you're also having the embodiment experience. So because there's the same, but a different. Yeah, when I think about hip hop, like you say, that kind of aggression that comes through, that fuck you, that kind of like the standing in the power, the groundedness, it's like so, compared to yoga, which has a completely different vibe and feel. I could see how they would weave together to bring through a certain level of embodiment.
Massively. I think the yoga helps on more of a, I feel dance is emotional release for me, and that's what I was treating it as. And then of course you get the discipline level when you get further into it, which is also what you get with yoga. You know, it's that discipline to fine tuning alignment or you know, whatever it is, or more of the mental, but that obviously comes through in dance as well. But I think the yoga provided context and framework, you know, that was a bit, I guess, tighter and a bit more structured, whereas in the dance scene, it's, you know, I guess it has strong roots and strong foundations, but it's a constant evolvement, whereas yoga was something that, and it's new, right? Like street dance, I mean, it's, when I say it's new, you know, it comes from you know, there's swing dance, there's a whole lot of different social dances, but the phenomena of hip hop is relatively new, whereas the roots of yoga gave me something deeper. And I'd always say, like, to people, you know, yoga is like my family. Like it's something I do every day. I can't not do it. Dance is like my best friend. You know, it's like yoga's the thing that they both keep me sane, but yoga provides a grounding that really melt into, and that it's self-led, whether dance has that social framework around it as well.
What were you doing? Particular styles of yoga, or just all over the place?
Yeah, so I mean, kind of, well, I started with Jiva Mukti. I was in London, Jiva Mukti Centre was there. I was going and going for it. And I'd say Ashtanga is really where my practice comes from a more of a philosophical lens. Definitely classical tantra in more recent years provides a way more, I relate to it and resonate just so much more than the 8-limb path. It didn't really it didn't really grab me, but and the stuff that I've really learned and started to embody from classical tantra coincides with dance and a lot of the other work that I do on a much deeper level. I mean, that makes sense, because classical tantra is an embodied liberation path, whereas classical yoga is actually a transcendent path. And, you know, from my understanding of historical stuff, which is not perfect at all, but the postures that we see actually came out of classical tantra. So which people don't really know, but the philosophical underpinnings are often referenced back to the Yoga Sutras, which is classical yoga. So there is this really interesting thing where a lot of people are practicing physical yoga with the classical yoga underpinnings, which are really about transcendence, even though the physical yoga came out of the classical tantric texts and practices, etc., which is so much more about embodied liberation. And this is what I think I always came up against. It was always like, well, hold on a minute, this isn't the postures and stuff. Yeah, great. I mean, I modify them a lot from traditional Ashtanga. I'm very much about, you know, claiming, moving freely in your body and not being constrained by, you know, the fact that you've got different size hips to Iyengar, or whatever it is that we're talking about. But you know, I always came up against that, and I think you know, I've done a lot of work in neo tantra, which is obviously very separate, but this I guess the things that I really picked up from those experiences were how to explore desire and not be afraid of that. And I think that's what classical tantra also offers. And you know, the 8-limb path for me, it was like I felt caged. I felt like that wasn't celebrated, where there's desire in the framework and the context of both, you know, neo tantra, or call it what you want, but that sort of culture and community, as well as within the classical tantra framework, from my experiences of it, has always been something that there is no guilt, there is no shame in it. It's like, oh, internet, yeah, there is no guilt, there is no shame in it. It's like an experience that you can move through life with, from a very from a very from a lens of awareness.
Yeah, that makes sense. So your work then, I know you've got a workshop tour that's coming up that's called Embodied Confidence. So is that a blend of yoga and dance or embodiment exercises? Like, what is embodied confidence in terms of what people receive, but also what you're actually doing in the room?
Yeah, love that question. Yeah, so it's really a combination of the tools and techniques that I've learned on my journey and that I use on a daily basis. I am a huge believer in practice. Like practice. Use your tools, like people say, well, how can I be more confident? Practice. Confidence is a muscle, trusting yourself, it's a muscle. You've got to work it like the same way you'd work out at the gym. So what I'm offering is tools to try on, practices from a very explorative, experiential lens. People are going to come into the room, they're going to get uncomfortable, they're also going to get lit up, they're also going to experience a state change. So I've the way that I've found to be the most effective through my journey is like I said, through the body, and that's breath, sound, movement, and yeah, the workshop is a body of work. I've presented in the UK, Europe, New York. So it's been a body of work that I've added to throughout the years, and with COVID, haven't really had a chance to actually do in person. I mean, I've taught it here in New Zealand a few times, but I'm really excited to, especially over the last 2 years over lockdown, I've refined a lot of these things a lot. And then being, introduced to the spiral body of work, which is another map and model that I draw a lot from. It's become a real rich mix of techniques and tools and insights for people to move through the world with more confidence and access that place of trust.
So if people are experiencing like anxiety or overwhelm or shame on a regular basis and feel like, especially social anxiety, I guess, like going into situations and just not feeling confident, it sounds like by coming along to this workshop, they'll get to learn tools and practices and ways to skillfully work with that so that they can move into a space from confidence rather than from the anxiety.
Yeah, and also gain some context. I think people think, especially if you are in a place of certainly shame, or there's anxiety there, or whatever it is, like you're in guilt or whatever's moving through you. When you have some context, when you have a framework to look at that emotion, it gives you the ability to step back from it, and a lot of the maps and models that I use, there's just even just the introduction to that, there's a bit of freedom that starts to happen for people, because you're no longer you can choose to step out of the experience and be a witness to it, and within that there's empowerment that happens. So yeah, providing a context to confidence, and this applies to confidence across all areas of your life. You can be uber confident in some areas and not so confident in other areas, and yeah, the framework and kind of maps that I've drawn from this body of work, I guess, just will, and this is also, I guess, what the spiral does, but just help you fast forward your journey.
I like that. Makes it more effective and efficient, right? Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the spiral, because not everyone's going to know what the spiral is. So what's kind of the elevator pitch on the modality that is spiral?
Yeah, the spiral is a tool of transformation. It gets you from A to B. Like, I guess it'd be the easiest way to put it. You know, the spiral is it is a healing modality. It combines NLP, chakra clearing, and uses a muscle testing tool from kinesiology. When I say that, it's like a mouthful for people, you know. So if you're, you know, tuning in and watching this, it's like, I don't know what that does. But actually, you don't really need to know. It's designed to help you when you are stuck, when you are feeling like I'm getting in my own way. I want this thing. I want this state of being, but I'm here and I want to get here. And it's what I love about it is, again, it's a map and a model of it maps 22 of the human emotions that we experience, shame being the lowest. So we start off at shame and we go into your field and clear shame and clear the triggers and the charges around shame to bring you back to a place that is neutral, so that you are not you're not getting rid of shame, you're getting rid of your charge around shame, so that you can be freer and lighter. And I think that's a really key piece, because, you know, I teach this work on confidence. It's not to say that I don't experience, I don't go into shame or go into feelings of anxiety or go into that happens, but it's just that I'm able to neutralize my charge to it. I'm able to dissolve it, to use your languaging, dissolve, digest, devour it, and move forward. So that's really what the spiral does in a very succinct way. And it's mapped out, we go from shame and work our way up the scale of consciousness, so that by the time you're finished with through the process, you're reaching higher states of consciousness, because you're not stuck in the shitty stuff at the bottom. And when you do go back there, you have the tools to bring your stuff out. So it's a rich body of work. And I mean, you've done some clearing sessions with me, and it's snipes.
I loved it. Yeah.
Get to the root.
Totally. I loved how I came in really clear from the perspective of, I want to dissolve the people pleaser and the different manifestations of that particular pattern. So for example, the people pleaser will sometimes show up as the ice queen, as one example. And I loved that when I came in to do a session with you, I was like, right, I want to do this thing. And you were able to just take those tools and that approach and that framework, and we did the thing. And it completely shifted. I noticed really palpable shifts in how I related to life within a week.
Yeah.
It was really discernible shifts in behavior. And that's what I love about it, is that, it's all good and well to go and have your chakras aligned, blah, blah, and you feel good coming out of the session. But if behavior is not spontaneously changing, what's really shifted?
Yeah. And a key piece of the work is to, first you shine a light on what's there. And I use muscle testing to do that. And then, so, we go into to actually see and dissect the emotions that are there in the field that are stopping you from moving forward to the place you want to be. And in the spiral process, I'll actually go in and test for the age when that emotion was lodged and anchored and all of that. And then you process it. So you have the piece of you digest it, you dissolve it, and depending on who I'm working with, if someone's really embodied, when we were working together, you have your tools. You were like, yeah, cool. You can locate it in the body. You can move it through you. Some people don't have access to that, as they're not as embodied as you are, for example. So there's different steps I would take depending on who the person was to help them come to that. And then there's the action and the integration, biggest piece of all. Like if that piece is not clearly, and there's obviously a level of self-responsibility that goes with that, but if that piece is not, it is so much easier to do when those two other pieces of the puzzle have happened. It just comes way more naturally. In fact, like your field is usually change. It's not like you're pushing shit uphill anymore. It's like, oh yeah, of course I'm going to go take that action, you know?
Yeah.
It's a lot more natural, and it's a lot more, it's not like you're jumping off a cliff to go do the thing. So yeah, those are kind of the three pieces. And the integration action piece, like getting clear on what that is for you is really the catalyst in how you move forward. Yeah.
I want to dive a little into what you said around embodiment, because as you pointed out, you're like, oh, you've got a level of embodiment, which means that certain pieces are easier. So let me just feel into what I want to ask here. Okay, so what embodiment feels like for me, I think the technical term is introception, where there's an ability to be aware of or to sense, to feel what's happening internally. And what I've noticed is that's become more and more refined or more and more subtle. And so then it feels like almost like the operating system of the mind-body complex is now, it's like I'm now able to program it, because I can sense a thing, I can hone into it, and then kind of do what's needed with a process or a tool or a practice. So the body-mind complex starts to feel like, rather than a fixed entity that is a total mystery, to me, with this level of embodiment, it just starts to feel more like an operating system with programs on it that can be identified and uninstalled. And it's not even really a big deal anymore.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
How would you describe embodiment or your own process of it? Because like you, I went from total disassociation, completely out of my head, in my head, out of the body, and then slow. It was a long journey. It was probably a good 25-year journey to be in this level of embodiment now. But I'm curious, how do you experience embodiment or working with the body-mind complex as such? Because it can seem like magic to people that aren't yet embodied per se.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I get that a lot. Like people like, is this magic? I don't understand what's happening. You know, like they'll have these moments, and it's a layering, right? Like it's like peeling off an onion. You think it's almost like I heard someone say one time, you know, they were saying how embodiment feels like a slope that they can't quite get on. Like it's like a nuance that they're only they kind of can't quite grasp it and what it is and what it you know, and it's so interesting because I remember feeling like that, and now it's just it just is. It's just like almost like an extra sense, if you will, of like of my reality. And so I think my experience of embodiment is everything I do, there is a lens, it's awareness. It's really just pure presence and awareness of the body and how the body's moving through the world. And it's I guess, yeah, like an operating system to come back to. You know, it's always like, okay, how is my body orientated in this moment right now, and what's going on here? And your mind can be thinking one thing, and this is why muscle testing is such a brilliant tool, because your mind can be thinking one thing, but your being and your operating system is actually doing something quite different, and yet you're being hijacked by your mind. So my experience of embodiment is it makes life rich. I can't imagine living without that felt sense of being in the body and understanding. It's a whole nother layer of sense, really. And I guess when, you know, I get a lot of people coming in, and for them when I go through the spiral, it's we go through an embodied process. You know, you're diving into your body. Okay, where do I feel shame in my body? Oh, what does that feel like? Oh, what sensation is there? You know, for a lot of people, that's really, really hard. I'm asking some really hard questions, and they're wanting to dissociate usually pretty quickly. So, you know, it's a journey. You don't, where I'm sitting right now, I feel like I'm in such a rich place because I have such a rich experience of the world. But, you know, give me another 10 years, I'm probably going to be sitting in an even richer place, you know? So yeah, it is a hard, I do actually find it a challenge to discuss with people what embodiment is if they haven't had that experiential understanding of it. It's something that I'm constantly trying to refine in how I talk about it, because it's quite, people find it quite they feel like they don't have access to it, or they feel like it's magic or it's not. But to me, it's very matter of fact. It just is. Yeah.
Which I guess is that, you know, that's why your history or foundation of embodiment practices of the dance and of the yoga is so juicy and so powerful, because you're literally giving people a pathway that they can follow into embodiment, right? And I reckon there's nothing greater that people can receive in so many ways.
Oh yeah, it makes the whole world luscious, you know. It really does. It's like so juicy.
Yeah.
And I think one thing is, you know, I guess on a very simplistic level, it's like, listen to your body. What does your body want? What does your mind want? What are the centers of you? What is your mind saying? What's your heart saying? You know, how's your belly today? What's your sex center saying? And actually recognizing that all those centers are going to have different voices. Like, just because you're listening to your body doesn't necessarily mean it's the truth. And I think that
conditioning lives in the body, right?
Conditioning lives in the body. And I think the first layer when I'm working with people is like, they actually realize they have a body. Oh, what, my body has something to say. And then the second layer is, okay, yeah, your body has something to say, but let's dig a little deeper. Like, you know, I'll never forget, I was on a training, and someone said, if I listen to my body, I wouldn't be here because my body is in so much pain. So it's like, yeah, okay, there's the first layer, yeah, I have a body, and then we actually dig deeper on like, hey, like what is, let's actually work through the conditioning of the body.
I think, you know, the body, if we look at it from the instinctual animal perspective, is often wired, psyche is wired to keep us safe, whatever that means. And often those safety mechanisms are actually preventing us from having a full aliveness experience, because the system scans, and it scans for patterns and goes, oh, in the past, this wasn't safe, so therefore it's not going to be safe now, so therefore I'm going to cut myself off from it by disassociating or going into freeze or whatever it is. So I find that interesting. Is like, when I look at embodiment, for me, a part of it is starting to recognize the way the nervous system functions and the way that the psyche tries to keep us safe, and being able to notice when those habitual patterns are running and ask the question, do I need to stay safe right now? You know,
and that comes back to the deep trust of self, of like, I know myself, I know I've got my back. And part of that, you know, there's practical things that you need for that. There's tools, and there's techniques, and there's you know, that level of trust also comes from competence, right? There's like that deep trust, but then there's also a practical level of trust that you can, you know, we've got so many resources available that you can dive into to help you through that experience. Like, you don't have to do that experience alone. And I think that's when you know, you have that soul level of trust, but actually getting those tools and techniques to help you with whatever your processing or whatever you're going through is game changing, and they're so available at the moment.
Yeah, that's for sure. So we're both in the spiritual community or the festival community or whatever you want to call it, and there's a lot going on in the field right now around how spaces are held, particularly in the neo-tantric world. ISTA is under the spotlight because there's some concern around the space not necessarily being trauma informed. There is some concerns around potential manipulation or abuse within the facilitator participant dynamics. I know you've attended ISTA, so as you're watching this come up in the field, how are you relating to it, or what's it making you ask or reflect on in your own journey?
Oh, I love this question, and it's been pretty huge, actually. I didn't know how much, like, I've had to give it space, because I still don't. I can only talk about, I guess, what I'm processing and kind of what's come up for me. I don't have a definitive opinion on it. But
right. We don't need opinions. I'd love to hear what you're processing, what it means to you, what it's bringing up for you, because that's all that's real, right?
It's shining a spotlight on what is true for me, because I attended ISTA in 2017 in the UK, and I loved it. Like, I got so it was profound in my journey, and also there were moments through ISTA where I thought, you gotta be fucking joking me. Like, are we really doing this? And I've always been someone that, likes to get my mind blowing. Like, I have like an insatiable thirst for experimentation. Like, I've experimented a lot with a lot of different modalities, a lot of different lifestyles, a lot of different, I've done the culty shit. I've been in the dogma. I've been under a guru. I've been, done a lot of different things. And I guess what it's done is now that I'm a little bit older, and I'm 32 now. I think I was 27 or 26 when I went through that. Went through ISTA. It's kind of made me realize that how important it is to be discerning, like how important it is to listen to your own voice, because one person's experience is going to be really different from another person's experience, and it doesn't mean that space was wrong. We all have choice. We all have, like, just because one person was hurt from the experience doesn't necessarily mean that another person, like, it's two different things, and it's such a case-by-case thing. What I would say is that I think being trauma informed is just so important. Like, I think it's we all need to be, as facilitators, we all need to be stepping up to that level of understanding. I think that safe spaces that haven't had that there's not that level of standard. I wouldn't personally, I don't think I'd, unless I don't really think I would engage, because through doing my own trauma informed training, I saw so many gaps, where to go back to what I said before, where one person's experience of what I potentially had been teaching, they would have taken away the experience I really was trying to facilitate. Yet, because of another person's traumas and experiences, they potentially weren't. And I think being trauma informed gives you the ability to actually cast your net wider and hold, so that everyone is getting an experience that, you know, won't be the same, of course, but is more rounded and integrated, and yes, maybe that means we're not going as deep, but do we really have to like pick the scars so much? Like, do we really have to do that? We're post 2020 now, you know. So I guess that's my take on the trauma informed. And as far as the power dynamics, I've been actually looking at my own level of well, how have I abused power? What's happening there? You know, like and when am I leaking energy? Because I am. There's times where I totally am, you know, and there's times where I've you know, been in relationship with people and I can feel myself doing it. And you know, I'm not the person on the spotlight right now, but in every area of my life, it's like, okay, well, you know, there's a lot of accusation on these people that are in the spotlight doing it, and I'm not condoning their behavior at all, but it's like, oh, well, hold on a minute, like, am I doing this on some level too? And that's been an interesting process. Yeah, and I'm not surprised. I think it's only a matter of time before ISTA was gonna blow up. Even when I was there in 2017, I was like, surely the police are going to walk through the door right now, or surely something's gonna, you know, like but also that edge lit me up, and the work was fucking profound, and I love their work. I just think it needs an upgrade. Yeah, and the people that are being, you know, are being put into the spotlight right now, like, yeah, you did some shit that was shady. Like, let's all, like, you know, is there a willingness to call yourself out as well? Because if there's not, then I think we need to start holding ourselves accountable as well as each other. How are we gonna move forward? So yeah, I guess those are some of the pieces I've been moving through. It's quite a lot. I love
that there is a lot there. And I love the fact that you're holding the complexity, right? The recognition that, fuck, it's amazing, on the edge, powerful, transformative work. And there's aspects that were freaking dodgy and could have been held in a different way and maybe causing harm. You know, like, all of it can be true. One person can have an extraordinary experience and one person can have an abusive, traumatizing experience. And I feel that in you, that holding of it all. And I love how you've turned it into self-reflection, that you're asking those questions in terms of, oh, shoot, where do I abuse power? Recognizing it probably won't necessarily be in the same way that a man might abuse power. But that's what I've really been feeling into as a woman. I'm like, oh, probably don't necessarily abuse my power to gain sexual advantage. But how else? How else do I abuse power, right? Yeah, and juicy.
That willingness to ask those questions is I think and to ask them and to be like held accountable to them, I think is what I think on a deeper level is what we're all asking, you know, is that we're asking more questions, and to be able to do that for yourself, I think is going to enrich your work.
Yeah. I think that's when I look at other leaders, et cetera, who might be under the spotlight. That's one of the first things I'm looking for in terms of if allegations or whatever have been brought to that person. I'm like, are they receiving that? Are they going into inquiry? Are they genuinely looking at their behavior to see what's there, rather than just deflecting or defending or justifying or rationalizing? You see? That's the piece I'm always interested in, because I think it's not what happened, because shit's going to happen. People are going to do shitty things. Totally. It's not that. It's not what happened. For me, it's how are you responding to what happened? Yeah.
And you know, and because they're in the spotlight, often what's happened they're so vilified for it. But it's like, well, actually, the true healing is if you can. How are you going to move forward from this? It's fascinating to watch. It's very it's big to watch because it triggers a lot, and you've got to give yourself some space to move through that. I think anyone who is watching, who has been involved in the ISTA community or resonates with what's going on right now, and it's it's across the board. There's hip hop, there's dance teachers been taken down right now as well. I'm like,
right.
You know, and I think we're at the time. The time is right for it, you know?
Yeah. I think, we're just being called to have a higher level of discernment around the way that power itself functions.
Yeah.
You know, because my sense is we're moving potentially from a world that is so much about power over. It's about leveraging power to get what you want or to control or exploit resources, etc. And so now it's blowing up so much in the conscious community and obviously, by the sounds of it, other creative communities. I feel like it's a call for us to move to a power within model where, how do I describe it? It's just way more like what I notice is when I'm around people that are grounded in their own power, they're not trying to manipulate, control, manage, or take advantage of other people. They're just at ease in themselves and they're embodying power and they're acting from power, but it's got a whole different vibe and feel.
I really like what you said in terms of like the internal power. And when I looked at what was happening, and when I looked at what's happening in the hip hop community, and even my older brother who's an artist, he said it's happening in the artist community right now as well. It's wild. But when I looked at that, I thought I knew straight away, like especially in dance culture, was like, oh, well, yeah, of course that person's been taken down. Or like, you know, within ISTA, it's like, oh, well, yeah, of course, because like that discernment, like I could have spotted it from a mile away, you know, it's obvious. And so like that self-trust of like knowing yourself, like knowing what your boundaries are, like having your own back, having your stability, asking yourself the questions, humbling yourself to like feel the shame that might be brought up from these conversations, and I think is huge. It's really a beautiful process to go through.
It'd be real interesting to look back in a couple of years and see what's unfolded from all of this. Okay, so I'm just aware of time and looking to wrap up. Is there anything else I wanted to ask? So Embodied Conference, the tour, when's it happening?
Yeah, so awesome. We've got on the 6th of August, I'm at East West. On the 3rd of September, I'll be in Wellington. And then I'm hoping to get to Christchurch. And in October, it's looking like I'll be in Melbourne and potentially
nice.
So I haven't confirmed dates for that yet, but August, September's confirmed. Yeah,
cool.
Send me a message. If you want.
Yeah, I'll put details down below as well. And you also work with a small number of people, taking them through the spiral, right?
Yes. Yeah. So the spiral is a 3-month process. It's the deepest work that I do, and it's a one-on-one container. And I take, depending on where I'm at, I've got spots for 2 more people this month, but yeah, I take a small number through. It's definitely something that I if you're resonating with what I've spoken about today, check out my website and DM me, and we have a chat. We see where you're at and if it's right for you. But it's incredible process.
Yeah, highly recommend it for sure. I love how systematic it is. So that was created by Dane Thomas, right? He's the original creator of that. Okay, awesome. Claire, such a delight to talk to you.
Thank you.
Alrighty, so that was Kara-Leah speaking on embodiment, on confidence, and on working through shame and guilt and anxiety and overwhelm and all the things. If you want to connect with her, just check out the details down below, and I'll be back probably next week with another conversation with Kara-Leah, sending you so many blessings.